It is Monday, November 28th here in Draft Shark Studios in Rochester, New York. Welcome to our Week 12 recap show. I'm your host, Matt Schaff. With me again is Adam Krautwurst. Adam, how did Thanksgiving treat you?
It was pretty good. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes. Bills win. Lots of fantasy. I love the 3 games on Thursday. That's amazing. And a nice youth. We had a youth flag game right around the corner from my house. That was a lot of fun. A lot of kids involved there. So it was a fun day all around.
Did you keep numbers for that and run a showdown for it?
I didn't, but I threw a pick to like a 9-year-old. So I don't know what that means for my future as a flag football quarterback.
Are you still ahead of Baker Mayfield, I think?
Obviously.
Yeah, it's nice to have another 3-game day, if only because it's one more day for my son to be like, there's more football on now. Yeah, buddy, it's all right. It's Thanksgiving. Right. That's the way it's been today. Maybe you should get on board if you don't like it.
Yep.
Yeah, good holiday, but it's good to be back for regular weeks. It's kind of like it's tough from the analysis standpoint because we had every team playing this week. So it was a lot of players to get to, a lot of teams to go through, getting set up for the week and then through the weekend. But now we're back to buys in the coming week. We got 2 teams on bye in week 13. We'll do some prepping for that. We got a full 6-team bye in week 14 for some reason, because apparently the NFL hates fantasy, even though we're basically making it as big as it is right now. But we'll address that as we move forward. You can always check the team intel tab at the top of not team intel, whatever. Check the top menu of the website, because I'm not good at remembering exactly what the terms are up there, but you can see strength of schedule. You can see adjusted fantasy points allowed. You can look ahead anytime you want and see what the upcoming schedule looks like for your players and where there are opportunities to pick up players who might help you down the stretch. We'll hit on a couple of those guys as we go through this, but for now, let's turn to the specific games of week 12. Not going to go game by game through Thursday, Adam, but I think there are a few primary things worth taking away as we assess our fantasy teams going forward. The first for me from that first game, DeAndre Swift did see a season high in targets with 8. His playing time still didn't change significantly though. So I'm still waiting to see if the Lions give us a signal that DeAndre Swift is healthier, that they're going to give him the ball more, and then we can trust him in fantasy lineups. Until then, it's going to be tough to do so.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's just I don't understand. I don't think anybody understands what's going on there with the Swift situation. But he's still it's not like he looks bad either. But still gets four catches, eight targets. It's what you want out of Swift. But the 5 carry stinks. And the Bills were just tackling terribly too. So he could have had a monster game that game. But again, Jamal Williams, 66 yards and a touchdown. So that's what he does.
Yeah, Jamal Williams, goal line monster.
That's
Tony
right.
Pollard in the next game split work again with Ezekiel Elliott, edged Elliott by 6 snaps, beat him by 2 carries, beat him by 1 target. So we didn't get the production we wanted from Tony Pollard in this game, but we got the playing time. And as long as that's happening, he remains in fantasy football lineups going forward.
Yeah, 18 carries for Pollard, 60 yards. I'm not really sure what happened. I mean, they're not like the Giants are like a middle of the road rushing defense. So I'm not really sure what happened here with Pollard not being able to pop off with all those carries. But yeah, I mean, listen, if he's going to get those 18 carries a week, we're going to be super happy with that. Only 2 targets, but even that 18 carries, 2 targets, 20 opportunities. I'm not going to complain. And he's done enough for us the last couple of weeks that I'm sure we can deal with this.
Colts up next for them, then Texans, Jaguars, Eagles. So some good rushing spots coming up. Colts not necessarily a great rushing spot, but if we've got Tony Pollard playing as much as he is right now, he's going to be in a lot more lineups than he won't. And then we finished off Thursday with kind of a strange Patriots-Vikings game. We got a lot more passing production than anticipated out of that one. Mac Jones, it's way too early to call Mac Jones a passing factor. Obviously, none of us was expecting as many passing yards as he had in that game, but if he can put together 2 more weeks, the Patriots have the best quarterback scoring schedule from weeks 14 through 17. Now, I wouldn't want to head into that stretch with Mac Jones as my quarterback, but if we're talking about, I don't know, a super flex or like a 16-team 1 quarterback league where you've been hurting at quarterback, there's room for Mac Jones to be more of a factor in the fantasy playoffs than we would have guessed.
Well, not only that, but like you said, you got 6 teams on bye week 14, but then the problem with guys like Mac Jones and stuff is he plays in a lot of inclement weather here at the end. And so he's going to run into some of these games where it's cold and windy and snowy, and he just doesn't have it. in those type games, and they don't really want him to throw, 39 times, So, but yeah, no, having that schedule is awesome. And Ramondre Stevenson with nine catches, 10 targets. Like a lot of it comes from those checkdowns to Stevenson, which makes it really easy for him.
They do have Buffalo coming up this Thursday night. After that, they're at Arizona, at Las Vegas. So weather shouldn't be an issue in those two. Again, I'm not saying go pick up Mac Jones and use him right now, but I'm going to be watching to see if he is somebody that we can use in some of these late season spots. Damian Harris suffered a thigh injury in that one, so we're going to have to watch him this week. Did not practice with the team Sunday. Obviously, if he's out, it only makes Ramondre Stevenson easier to play. And then Jacoby Myers basically crushed by my expectations in the over-under bets. Hurt his shoulder early in that game, did come back, only played 16 snaps. He downplayed the injury afterward, said that it felt better as the game wore on, but we're going to have to watch him this week to make sure that he's good to go and back ready for a usual role to give us the catches that we need.
Yeah, still was okay, 3 for 62, but like you said, was out for quite a bit and then came back, only saw 4 targets.
On to the Sunday action. We'll start with Panthers and Broncos, 23-10 Panthers. I can't believe, Adam, that I bet Russell Wilson's over in passing yards. I don't know. It's one of those things where as you're doing it, you're like, this is a mistake. This is a mistake. And then afterward, you're like, yeah, that was a mistake. I think it's the last time that I bet him. I bet is over this season, regardless of what the numbers are.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if it was last week before. We're talking about doing notes for the Broncos. It's just like the Broncos suck. It's just what ends up every week. That's all you got to put on there. I wonder how low can they make the Russell Wilson passing yards now for us to take the over. There's just no explanation for it. He just looks like he's never played football before. It's the weirdest thing. It's the weirdest thing ever. But you do have, there's some bright side to the offense a little bit. Latavius Murray is startable, moving forward as long as he's getting the role that he's getting. Only 10.8 fantasy points, only 1 catch, but he'll fall into the end zone enough times to be kind of an RB3 flex type guy. Sutton, usual Sutton game, acrobatic catches all over the place, no touchdowns again, he's 14 points 12 to 14 every single week. And I was hoping to get Judy back this week, but not even excited to start Judy in this offense. It's so bad. It's like, but maybe with the week 14 buys, you'll be looking to do that. But it's just the offense just stinks overall, and you're definitely not starting Russell Wilson.
Yeah, kind of a surprisingly low touch count for Latavius Murray, 13 carries, 1 target in that one, but did dominate backfield playing time, 49 snaps for him, 10 combined for Marlon Mack and Divine Ozigbo. We might get Mike Boone back for the week 13 game against Baltimore. He's worth stashing in spots where you have, in leagues where you have enough room to do so. I'll be curious to see what the work split is between him and Murray once he's back. Certainly assuming that Murray is the leader in touches, but we'll see how much of a split there is. Chase Edmonds, of course, is on IR, so he's not likely to be a factor again this season. You mentioned Cortland Sutton fine in that game. Greg Dulcich, again, playing time was fine. Target count was not. It's one of those things where you can keep saying, by process, you play a tight end that's running that many routes, but if it keeps not working, I blame the offense overall, but if it keeps not working, we got to look for different answers here. So I think I'm going to be adjusting my expectation for Greg Dulcich next week.
Yeah, and I think he had a touchdown too, called back on a penalty in the back of the end zone. So again, with guys in the Dulcich range, the tight end 2 range, you're just looking to hopefully get a touchdown out of them.
We did have Cortland Sutton, Kendall Hinton, and Brandon Johnson in 3 wide receiver sets. So they were the top 3 for the team in routes. So they were running Brandon Johnson more often than Greg Dulcich, which doesn't help the target count at all. On the Panthers side, Sam Darnold, 164 yards and a touchdown passing, rolled a touchdown in from 2 yards out. So you love to see that. Obviously, Sam Darnold, one of the best touchdown rollers that I've ever seen. He targeted DJ Moore, more importantly, on 6 of his 19 pass attempts, and the volume could use some work, but that's a 31.6% share. So Sam Darnold got in there and he threw the ball to DJ Moore. That's really all we're asking him to do.
Yeah, that touchdown, that rushing touchdown from Darnold was so weird. It was like a read option. He runs up the middle, slips and falls, gets up and or not even gets up, like rolls. Like the defensive player runs like jumps over the top of him thinking he's down. It was like so stupid, but it was a touchdown. Hey, it counts for whoever started him. But yeah, it was DJ Moore again. DJ Moore is basically good with every quarterback except for Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's not tall enough to get it over the line to DJ Moore. So good for him. Getting rolling there. Still didn't see a ton of targets, six targets, but they ran the ball a ton in this game. Foreman had 24 carries, Chuba Hubbard had 17 carries. So this was just a wild kind of situation here that they ran the ball 70% of the time. So, if the fact that DJ Moore did what he did when they only threw the ball 30% of the time is saying something. So continue to roll him out as long as, Baker Mayfield's not his quarterback. We're rolling out DJ Moore. Foreman looked awesome, looked really, really good. 24 carries, 113 yards, but no catches, no touchdown, no targets even. So it's like, again, that's all that the thing that matters for running backs are you getting touchdowns? Are you getting catches and targets? And it's like you have a monster game like he had, and he only gets you 11 fantasy points.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a limitation to them. Going to be touchdown dependent. They have a bye in week 13. Then they're at Seattle, which looks like a good rushing spot. We'll talk about what Josh Jacobs did to them in a little bit. 2 weeks after that, they have the Lions in week 16. So there's room for Deontay Foreman to help you. Certainly going to help more when he finds the end zone. And did remain ahead of Chuba Hubbard, even though there were plenty of carries for both of those guys. Browns 23-17 over the Bucs in OT. The Bucs leaned back toward the pass in this one before their bye. In that win in Germany over the Seahawks, they leaned a lot more run than they have for most of the season. But this game saw them back to throwing the ball on 2/3 of offensive snaps. Didn't go great. Tom Brady just 5.7 yards per attempt against a non-scary Browns defense. Did hit Chris Godwin and O'Keefe for touchdowns. I think we've all been waiting for that one to come. Chris Godwin hit 100 yards for the first time this year. Mike Evans, just 2 catches among 9 targets.
O'Keefe broke the slate. He broke the DFS slate yesterday. Unbelievable. 1 catch for 5 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, Brady, it's just one of those games where Brady didn't look in sync. The offense didn't look great. Evans 2 catches for 31 yards, wasn't getting open either. Like they tried going to him. He had 9 targets, but it's like every time they went to go to him, it was a deep ball that he just was completely covered on. Evans kind of, I want to say he looks banged up, but he's kind of he's looking old out there. He's run so many deep routes over his career, and it's just like I feel like he doesn't get that separation that he used to. I hate to say it about my guy, Hall of Famer Mike Evans, but it might be the Godwin show moving forward here. 12 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown, and you could tell, Brady was going to him. They were in sync. Brady was trusting him, and they obviously have a couple of years of working together. But for 13 targets, a touchdown. Godwin now has 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games after not being able to score. So good for him. We're obviously excited to start Godwin moving forward. But the passing game, even though Brady threw for 250 and 2, it just didn't seem like it was really going today.
Yeah, I mean,
Yesterday.
weather might have been a factor. It wasn't pouring by game time, but it was a wet day. They have the Saints coming up. Saints have been a tough matchup for Brady since he's been a Buck. So we shouldn't expect a huge breakout game there, but it's not a scary matchup in itself. They're at the 49ers after that, then home for the Bengals. So it could be an easier slate, but there's room for production. Rachaad White dominated backfield work with Leonard Fournette out for this game. 14 of the 18 running back carries against the Browns, 9 targets, tied for second on the team, caught all 9 of them for 45 yards. So it wasn't a great game in terms of efficiency or production, but he certainly got there for us in PPR.
Yeah, got there for us PPR. This is what if you've been holding on to Rachaad White, he got there for you, right? You wanted him. 9 carries for 45 yards, looked good. 64 yards rushing, didn't get the touchdown, but still got there fantasy wise around to 20 fantasy points. So, I mean, 9 targets is just incredible usage for a running back. Again, that's what we're looking for. He didn't look like anything super. I mean, I think his first carry one of his first carries went for 20 yards. It was a massive hole on the left. I think they just lost a lineman for 3 to 4 weeks now. I just saw. Yeah, Wirfs is out for a while. So, again, that doesn't help. Obviously, Leonard Fournette will be coming back. Even if you only got Rachaad White like this for 1 week, hopefully he got you into your high stakes for fantasy playoffs with this performance. But talking about the Bucs, Matt, you were referencing them against the Saints. So I know this isn't a preview show, but what are we doing? Like, I wouldn't hesitate to bench. We're probably going to get Lattimore. If Lattimore's back, I would not hesitate to bench Mike Evans and Tom Brady against them. Evans just never does anything against Lattimore ever, and Brady really struggles against them. So if you got a big fantasy matchup, I think it would be okay to bench them both.
I definitely think it is within reason. Like you said, Tom Brady's struggled against the Saints. We should get Marshawn Lattimore back for this game. Tom Brady's been around the bottom of QB1 territory in our weekly rankings as it is. So we're already talking about a QB who's like 11, 12, 13, somewhere around there and hasn't been producing. We've been waiting for the positive touchdown regression. We've gotten some of that the past 2 games. But like I said, 5.7 yards per pass attempt is not good. So you're going to need to throw over 40 passes to be effective at that level. And if you're still not putting up huge numbers, then there's obviously some risk if the volume comes in a little below that. And if you have a couple turnovers.
Yeah, exactly. It just really depends on I was just going to do a little DJ Moore, Mike Evans comparison. Like, hey, would you start Evans or DJ Moore? I'm like, oh, DJ Moore's going to buy, but he still might score as many points as Mike Evans against Marshawn Lattimore.
To your point, Mike Evans against the Saints has not caught more than 4 passes in a game against the Saints since week 1 of 2018.
Yeah. Exactly. So, hey, if you got better options, feel free to go, or even options that are in the same range. Feel free to bench Mike Evans.
We will see where Mike Evans settles in our week 13 rankings. Those will come up in the middle of the day, Tuesday. Might be a point of discussion where Mike Evans sits. On the Browns side of this one, Nick Chubb, 26 carries to Kareem Hunt's 5, 116 yards. So Nick Chubb has not been a regular 20 carry guy for us in recent weeks, but got there yesterday. Certainly working clearly ahead of Kareem Hunt. Has another good matchup coming up with Houston next week. So obviously Nick Chubb is in lineups in most cases. It's nice to see him get that kind of production and that kind of gap ahead of Kareem Hunt in work.
Yeah. Kareem Hunt looks like he's shot. I mean, he hasn't looked good all year. The numbers say he hasn't been efficient. 5 carries for 15 yards. I mean, he doesn't make anybody miss. He doesn't look explosive. He looks like he's washed to me. And that might be why the Browns couldn't trade him at the trade deadline. But yeah, nice gap there. Between Chubb and Hunt, 116 yards and a touchdown for Chubb. So yeah, I mean, it's the same usual suspects here. You're going to start Chubb. The passing game was spread around. Amari Cooper got his. Njoku, nice to see him get 7 targets. That's 7 or 8 targets here. I should have started him. I started George Kittle over him in 2 big leagues this weekend. Njoku really didn't get there till the end. He had like a nice one-handed touchdown in the back of the end zone at the end of the game. But other than that, his average catch was 5.8 yards a catch. It was all low A-dot stuff. Hopefully that changes with Deshaun Watson coming back. But yeah, Njoku looks, as far as like a usage perspective, I think you could start him comfortably moving forward.
Yeah, we were waiting for him to reclaim the top job. Did that in this game, finished second on the team in targets. So that matters to me more than the short yardage on his receptions, which, as we said, was a wet day, probably affected the length of those plays to some degree. Amari Cooper, 32% of targets, made up for a drop with a long catch to set up the game-winning touchdown in overtime. So yeah, all these guys should get a boost from Deshaun Watson returning. We're expecting him to play in week 13. Jaguars 28, Ravens 27 on the Baltimore side first. Mark Andrews, disappointing, and he was even with Josh Oliver in targets and catches for this game. Still ran routes on almost all of the dropbacks. 35 of Lamar Jackson's 37 dropbacks, led the team in routes. So there's not a worrisome takeaway from Mark Andrews here. It's not like this is why you need to be concerned. It's just this was a goofy game. It was basically Josh Oliver taking all of his own stuff from the usual games, plus Isaiah Likely's playing time, and just got lucky with opportunities.
Yeah. And Andrews dropped a wide open touchdown. This is the second or third time he's done that this year. Dropped a wide open touchdown in the end zone, which severely affects Lamar's scoring there. And in fact, it was on the same drive, where Lamar scores from the one. They call him short. Fine. He comes back, throws a touchdown pass to Mark Andrews. No, he drops it. It's like, oh, okay. And then here comes Gus Bus. Gus Bus, naturally. Guy can't do anything. Just plods his way. It falls into the end zone for a touchdown. And it was funny. I had Lamar going, like, oh, of course he didn't score a touchdown. I'm like, what would be even better? I said it aloud to my kids. I was like, you know what? I would rather have a Lamar to Mark Andrews touchdown pass anyways. Touchdown pass to Mark, clang. I'm like, oh, okay. What a day. Well, what a day. But Lamar just doesn't look the same. I don't want to say he doesn't look right, because he looks He looks right. Like, it's not his fault that he has no weapons. It's not his fault that Mark Andrews is dropping touchdowns. He just doesn't look as explosive as he used to be. Like, I know he had a bunch of rushing yards. I'm going to start to see what he had here. He had 89 rushing yards on 14 carries. But there were times where he had a ton of space in front of him and decided to throw the ball into, Devin Duvernay with a guy all over him. Situations like that where he just doesn't look as explosive as he used to be. I don't know. Maybe he's just not running as much this year because he's trying to get paid and doesn't want to get hurt. I totally get that. And he did get there fantasy wise today, 250 passing yards, passing score, and a bunch of rushing yards. But I just feel like he's just not going to be that guy the rest of the year when he doesn't have the weapons. So there's some other guys you're going to want to start over him down the stretch, but he does have that massive upside as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As far as Gus Edwards goes, though, and we've talked about Lamar Jackson's downside, what he has been doing since Rashad Bateman went down, it's definitely been worse, and that's definitely affecting the offense on whole. In the backfield, though, Gus Edwards, in addition to plotting for a touchdown, 84% of the running back carries in this one. He shared the passing work with Kenyon Drake and Justice Hill, but didn't really lose that stuff to them. They didn't get much. One total target for Kenyon Drake plus Justice Hill. So Gus Edwards right back to being the leader of this backfield, which he has been now in each of his 2 games. And this game was even more so him in the lead than his first return this season. So Gus Edwards, when he's on the field, looks like Baltimore's lead running back, and that certainly makes him worth rostering and considering for lineups going forward.
Absolutely. If you got Gus Edwards, you're going to want to start him moving forward. Dobbins has got to be available to come back soon if they even bring him back this year. But again, like, Kenyon Drake has looked better this year than Gus Edwards has ever looked. And naturally, Kenyon Drake gets no touches. He gets 1 target, 2 carries for 2 yards. Like, it just makes sense that Gus Edwards would get everything coming back when Kenyon Drake has had such a pretty explosive year for kind of what we're expecting out of him. So, but yeah, you're not starting Drake while Gus Edwards is around, and you're going to want to start Gus Edwards, especially in games where they're going to be high scoring or games that they're projected to win, which is almost every game, but they always find a way to lose.
On the Jacksonville side, Zay Jones had a career best game, his top marks ever in targets, catches, and yards, added the game-winning 2-point conversion at the end. He's been usable for most of the season. So I think the takeaway here is not look how good Zay Jones is. It's rather don't overrate this game and now treat Zay Jones like he's a must start just because you saw him put up monster numbers. He still has 1 touchdown all year. He has cracked 70 yards only twice. So usable, not a must. And it certainly helps Zay Jones going forward. The Trevor Lawrence is playing better lately than he was before. 3 straight games where he's just been good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, Jones is not a must. He got 32% of the target share. But yeah, I feel like it's always someone different every single week with these Jaguars, right? They're usually spreading the ball around week to week. This week was Zay Jones. It's been Christian Kirk a ton. It's even been Evan Ingram a bunch. Speaking of Evan Ingram, very disappointing week for him. He had 1 target on a team that is, that's 11th best. The Ravens are the 11th best matchup for tight ends. I thought Evan Ingram with a ton more work in this. 1 target was out there, 35 routes he ran, which is 3rd on the team behind the top 2 receivers there. So he just never looked at him. Even at the goal line, he's throwing to running backs on swing passes for touchdowns. So Ingram just was not in the game plan.
Yeah, was not throwing to Travis Etienne, of course, because Etienne left early with a foot injury. He said afterward he expected to be ready for week 13. Doug Peterson said today that Etienne was cleared to return to that game against Baltimore, but that he didn't want to risk further injury. So we'll see. We are expecting Travis Etienne to be ready for week 13, and we'll watch this week to confirm. JaMychal Hasty took over the job in his stead, didn't get much on the ground. Baltimore's been a tough run defense, number 2 now on the season in Football Outsiders DVOA. It's not surprising that he couldn't run very well, but 5 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown here. I think it's certainly worth, as we wait to confirm Etienne being okay, it's worth grabbing JaMychal Hasty in plenty of spots. Also worth considering Darrell Henderson, who's going to cost a lot less.
Yeah. I mean, JaMychal Hasty looked good in the passing game. Running backs are always worth adding here, right? So he looked good in the passing game, didn't look so good in the rushing game, 12 for 28. But it's fine. We'd rather have him be good in the passing game. Like you said, Henderson Henderson's there. He will have a role, I think, going forward. But again, if there's a serious injury to Travis Etienne. So, yeah, I mean, I think Etienne will be fine to come back, but you still want to add Hasty because it just goes to show you we're just an injury away from a guy being fantasy startable. But Henderson, if you did cut him after he got cut, he's worth adding.
I thought you were starting a Key and Peele sketch there for a minute.
Severious Minkosiousness. That's right.
All these Jaguars get the Lions and Titans the next 2 weeks. So a couple of potentially good spots for Trevor Lawrence in particular. I'm going to be deciding whether to start Trevor Lawrence or Lamar Jackson in my Football Guys Championship lineup against our pal Mike Shope next week. And I got to say my early lean is Trevor Lawrence against the Lions over Lamar Jackson against the Broncos.
Listen, he's a big Lamar Jackson fan. So I don't know whether you want to beat him without him or beat him with him. So
I just want to beat him.
That's all right. That's fine. That's fine. And listen, if you get a big lead on him and it's over, feel free to bench one of those quarterbacks just to show up Mike at the end there. That's what Noah Crowhurst would do.
Nice. Bring along nicely. Dolphins 30-15 over the Texans in a game where I think they just coasted for like 3/4 of it because it was about I think I blinked twice and the Dolphins were up 30-0 and then they just decided to stop scoring for the day. Jeff Wilson Jr., big letdown for me, 13 carries, 39 yards. Thank goodness he scored a touchdown. I know he left with an injury at one point, but did return, wound up playing more than 60% of the snaps. So he should be fine going forward. We'll see about Raheem Mostert for next week. The Dolphins, though, just 2 offensive touchdowns in this game. I thought that we were just ready to put up, 50 points in this game, and then it just stopped.
Yeah, they took out the starters in like the middle of the third quarter, and then the Texans started to creep back a little bit in this game. But it was kind of a disappointing game for everybody. I mean, Wilson had a beautiful matchup without Raheem Mostert here. He did get a touchdown, but only had 13 fantasy points with a touchdown. Subbed out in the game late due to a score. He was also cramping. These Dolphins. All these players are always cramping down there. I mean, I know it's hot and all that. We think they'd be used to it. Tyreek Hill, I get updates on my phone 5 times a week. The Tyreek Hill, questionable return with cramping or whatever it is. It's like, okay, well, whatever.
Get him one of those little Go-Gurt type things that they like to have on the sideline, or that
that's right.
Little, fruit squirters that Mahomes has after a touchdown. Let's go. Come on. They gotta have this under wraps.
Yeah, they gotta have something. I mean, the guy's running all over the place.
I can't fault him. I wouldn't want to be doing anything physical in Miami at any point in the year.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to do anything in the fall like that at any point of the year. But yeah, you're still obviously you're starting Waddle, you're starting Tyreek. It was just kind of an unlucky, disappointing game for them to not crush the Texans.
I think the most worrisome thing from this game is Dameon Pierce. Little chance in this particular contest, 8 yards on 5 carries, but it's his second straight game with just 8 rushing yards. He had 17 total receiving yards in those 2 games as well. So the offense is undoubtedly hurting him. Now, I have some relative good news here, Adam, because after the 2 straight 8-yard games, I was like, let's look at how many guys he's facing in the box, how often he's facing 8 in the box, stacked boxes to stop him from running. And it's not nearly as much as you would think. I looked at the NFL Next Gen stats, and he's just not high in those stacked box rankings, like how often he's facing those on running play. Where he's hurting is that he hasn't fared well on yards before contact. So the offensive line's not doing him any favors. I still think that means when they get weaker matchups on defense, there's room. I don't think that Dameon Pierce is going to land in RB1 territory for me this coming week against Cleveland, which has been a weak run defense. I think it's going to be tough still to push him outside of RB2 territory, though, even coming off of these 2 bad games.
Yeah, I agree. I think he had less than a yard before contact in this game. Now which is terrible. Now he only had 8 yards total. So, but yeah, it's going to be hard to sit him when he's like the whole offense. Although Cook showed up a little bit today. Akins had a nice touchdown and 61 yards today. But yeah, Pierce is going to be tough to sit with all the bye weeks, with all the injuries. He was involved a little bit in the passing game. He did get 6 targets. 3 catches on 6 targets is terrible for a running back. I don't see if he had any drops or anything, but and then he only got 8 yards on those 3 catches. So those just sound like terribly set up screens. But yeah, hopefully if he can continue to get those 8 targets, there's 6 targets, he'll be fine. And then he'll obviously get more than 8 yards. And they also dialed him down at the end of this game too, because it was a blowout. Ogumbawale was getting involved there at the end. So Pierce will have better games ahead, hopefully.
Rex Burkhead left this one with a head injury, which is, I always find funny that they call it a head injury instead of a concussion. So I don't know if the concussion's been confirmed, but if he's out, that should help the target outlook for Dameon Pierce. Like I said, probably still going to land in RB2 territory, but we should definitely be more cautious than we thought we would be just a couple weeks ago with his usage. Tight end needy teams, I think, should take note that Jordan Akins has seen increased playing time over the past 3 weeks. He did top 4 targets for just the first time all season in this game against Miami. It was his first game of the year with more than 3 catches, but third time that he's reached 60 receiving yards, including 2 of the past 3 games. So I'm not saying that Jordan Akins is coming along to save anybody's tight end situation, but if you're needy and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do this coming week, Jordan Akins is at least an option.
Yeah, exactly. I was hoping he would have a better week last week. I was forced to start him a bunch there with injuries and bye weeks and stuff, but I still held on to him a little bit and had to start him a couple spots this week. 5 for 61 and a touchdown for those tight end premium leagues, man. 5 catches or a touchdown is big, and he got both. 12 yards a catch. Had a great. His touchdown was great. Nice catch and run. He could be a starting tight end for you moving forward. He's certainly better moving forward than Mike Gesicki. All right, Matt.
Yeah, always. He is an athletic guy, though. Does have that potential to turn a catch into a longer play or catch downfield stuff that a lot of tight ends don't. So we'll see about him. We'll move on now, though, to Jets 31, Bears 10, and Mike White, your new leader in the MVP voting, 22 of 28 passing, 315 yards, 3 touchdowns, only 1 sack, 0 turnovers. Brought Garrett Wilson back to life for us, 5 for 95 and 2 touchdowns on 8 targets. No other Jet saw more than 3 targets in this game. Elijah Moore found the end zone, added a 42-yard catch as well. Still checked in just 5th among Jets in routes behind 2 wideouts as well as the team's top 2 tight ends, though.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So Elijah Moore with, like you said, 2 for 64 and a touchdown. He only saw two targets, so that's not great, but just
it's
showing
awesome efficiency, though. It's showing what he could do. Imagine if they threw him the ball 10 times.
Elite efficiency coming from my guy Elijah there. And his touchdown was nice. It was a deep out on 3rd down for the touchdown. Caught that. 7% target share is not going to cut it, though. Pretty awful, but hey, he's showing some signs there. It's nice to see, Mike White season. I didn't want to lose a chance. I didn't want to lose an opportunity to say Zach Wilson stinks, even though he didn't play. This goes to show you that he's the 3rd best quarterback on their team. But yeah, Mike White getting the ball to the guys that need to get in this offense. Wilson, awesome game, 29% target share, made a guy miss for a nice, incredible 54-yard touchdown catch and run. So he's awesome. You can start him confidently moving forward when you got Mike White at quarterback, and hopefully some people were able to pick up Elijah Moore, even though we only had the 2 targets. It's a good sign moving forward. He was cut in a bunch of leagues maybe about a month ago. And I remember I was talking about hey, maybe, let's pick him up. Maybe we get a new quarterback. We got a new quarterback. So he might be a stash on the roster for you moving forward.
He looks like a roster clogger to me in redraft. He's still the 3rd wideout and 5th Jet in routes. I'm not counting on him getting in there this year, but it's at least nice to be reminded that he's still alive. I think the biggest takeaway, certainly competent quarterbacking helped, but the biggest takeaway from this matchup is the Bears defense is absolutely awful right now. From our pal Lord Reeves on Twitter this morning, Rich Rebar of Sharp Football, these are the stats for the Bears defense over the past 5 weeks. Worst in the league in points allowed per drive, worst in percentage of drives that end in a touchdown, worst in yards allowed per play, worst in sack rate, worst in yards per pass attempt, 2nd worst in completion rate. So Mike White, yay, but more so going forward, start guys where possible against this Bears defense.
Yeah, it sounds like the Bears defense is pretty awful. They get Green Bay next week and then a bye, and then for the big race, Philly, Buffalo, Detroit. Those 3 offenses you're looking to clean up against the Bears in your fantasy playoff. So that'll be good. And the Bears defense is so bad they put Zonovan Knight, Bam Zonovan Knight on the fantasy radar. His first touch was a catch, 17-yard gain, made two guys miss. He showed decent. I want to say he showed decent vision during the game, but that's because the holes were so big. He was bouncing off tacklers. James Robinson was a healthy scratch for Zonovan Knight, so it might be a 3-man committee now with Michael Carter, Hurts probably out. Is it a high ankle or just a regular ankle sprain? I don't know.
Last I saw was that it was likely an ankle sprain. I didn't see high or low.
Okay, but so he's probably going to be out for a little bit of time. Zonovan Knight, absolutely worth adding, worth the time of year where any running back who has any shot here. And listen, they scratched James Robinson for a reason. They wanted to see what this guy's made of. So I'm adding Zonovan Knight for sure. James Robinson, obviously still worth rostering. And then Ty Johnson, every year, I feel like every year at this time of year, he always shows up at like fantasy high stakes playoff time where there's an injury and he always sneaks in. He had a great 30-yard rushing touchdown. But again, the Bears defense is pretty bad, but all these guys are worth kind of rostering with Michael Carter out because, the Jets are winning football games. They're in the playoff hunt. Like they're not punting this season away. So look for them to get whoever they think can score them touchdowns out on the field.
And worth noting that Ty Johnson played behind Zonovan Knight after Michael Carter went down in this game. So order them that way if you're looking at these guys on waivers this week. The next few games for them, they're at Minnesota next week, at Buffalo after that, then home for Detroit and Jacksonville. We'll see about the prognosis on Michael Carter and his expected return timeline. More bad news on the Bears side besides their defense being awful. Darnell Mooney is expected to miss the rest of the season with torn ligaments in his left ankle. So Chase Claypool led Bears wide receivers in routes in the game against the Jets on Sunday. Once they have a quarterback again, that should matter. After him, Byron Pringle, Dante Pettis, Equinemius St. Brown. That's how they were ordered in routes. So I would look at Chase Claypool. I would try not to look at the other guys. And we'll see about Justin Fields' return. We'll see if he's going to be back for week 13. I wonder, though, Adam, whether the fact that the team is now 3-9 and facing a week 14 bye, I wonder if that factors into whether Justin Fields returns for week 13.
Yeah, I think it does. Unfortunately, there's a lot of fancy teams out there with Fields. It was smashing for them. But yeah, I think if I had to guess, he would sit this week and then have the bye and then come back. But yeah, like you said, Chase Claypool is going to be the lead dog there now, I think, in the passing game because Mooney is out for the year. Kudos to Claypool playing through all those Sauce Gardner pass interference calls that weren't called. He got one. They actually called a pass interference on Sauce Gardner yesterday. Incredible. But yeah, Claypool 2 for 51. We're going to need more than 2 catches from him going forward. And again, it's not even like he's the best receiver on the team, probably, but it's not an offense that you really want to be buying into. It's not a guy that you're going to be. I'm sure he's not available in waivers, but he's not a guy you're going to be even dying to get into your lineup.
Yeah, it's somebody to stash where it's a possibility and definitely not somebody that's a must stash. 2 catches yesterday, 5 targets. I'm going to need to see a good game from him before I'm putting him into a lineup. They're playing Green Bay this coming week. Anything else from that game?
Nope.
Bengals 20, Titans 16. The biggest issue for me from this one, Adam, is Derrick Henry's rushing. 38 yards on 17 carries against the Bengals. 3rd straight game for him with 3.1 yards per carry or less. And those came against the Bengals, Packers, and Broncos, who currently sit 16th, 29th, and 18th in run defense DVOA rankings on Football Outsiders. So it's not like he just ran into several straight tough run defenses. It's 3 teams that shouldn't be that big an obstacle stopping Derrick Henry on the ground. Philly and Jacksonville the next 2 weeks. Neither of those defenses have been particularly tough against the run. But again, if it's just that Tennessee can't get Derrick Henry going, then the opponent might not matter so much. That all said, I'm not sure what we can do about that. You can't really sit Derrick Henry at this point in the season.
No. Yeah, no, you're not sitting Derrick Henry. But again, it might just be he's old, he's banged up, he's old for a running back, he's banged up, like he could be wearing down. Like this is kind of something that was in his range of outcomes. 17 carries for 38 yards, not good. Kudos to them at least for getting him involved in the passing game to get him out in space. 3 catches for 79 yards, should have been like 3 for 85 and a touchdown, but he fumbled at the 3-yard line or 5 or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was like the 3-yard line. He got stripped, and then Traylon Burks is there for the touchdown.
Treylon Burks, what a roller coaster. I started Treylon in a couple leagues this week, so I was excited, but then I was also playing against him in like a 5K. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? If I lose this game by 6 points, oh my gosh. But yeah, no. And that was that Treylon's first career touchdown, a fumble recovery. Sure. I think it is. I think it's his first touchdown. But kudos for Burks being down there blocking for the big dog. But yeah, you're not benching Henry. Hey, let's get Treylon Burks more involved in this passing game. Six targets, 4 catches, 70 yards. They're getting him more involved. His route rate is going up. His target percentage is going up, and he looks good doing it. So hopefully we might get an explosion here from Burks over the next couple of weeks.
That was his first touchdown. It's his 3rd straight game since coming back with at least 6 targets. So we like the usage there. Love it if he can steal other people's touchdowns anytime that happens. He's the one that you're looking to use potentially. Not a must use, but certainly him over Robert Woods, over Nick Westbrook-Akine. And even on the Derrick Henry front, like I said, got there yardage-wise yesterday. Not losing the fumble would have helped. But the schedule is still second best remaining for running backs the rest of the way by our adjusted fantasy points allowed. So there's room for a rebound from Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. He gets Houston week 16, incredible. Chargers week 15, awesome. And even leading up to that, Phillies neutral, Jacksonville is a slightly positive matchup. So, and he's owned Jacksonville for 8 years already. You're not benching Derrick Henry against Jacksonville. So yeah, just start him moving forward. He'll get back on track if he can stay healthy. You know, they want him to be involved heavily. So it shouldn't be a problem, but you just might not get those big 30 to 40 point outings that you're kind of used to.
Bengals offense did what was expected in this one. Not particularly efficient running or passing, but the Tennessee defense has been good in recent weeks, especially. Nice game for T. Higgins, nice game for Hayden Hurst. They're really, no matter what people tell you, and you'll hear it, but there hasn't been a real difference in Hayden Hurst's role or opportunities in the 4 games that Jamar Chase has missed so far. So I don't think the Jamar Chase expected return in week 13 has any real impact either way. Obviously, Hayden Hurst made out target-wise in this one, but that hasn't been a consistent thing over the past 4 weeks. We got Samaje Perine taking over Joe Mixon's role with Joe Mixon out for this game. Chris Evans, I don't think exists anymore because Travion Williams was the number 2 running back in this game.
Yeah, no. I mean, Perine it was great to see what he did yesterday. He only averaged 3.5 yards a carry, but he got in the end zone. He was heavily involved in the passing game, which was nice to see. 80% of the snaps for Perine. And it was nice that it paid off against a tough defense. I struggled to start him in some leagues because it's like, I've been holding on to Perine all year for a situation like this. I think we talked about it last week. It's like, yeah, well, are we going to start him against the Titans? And hopefully you guys did, because he ended up paying off, snuck in for a touchdown, got 7 targets, which is awesome. It was a little bit disappointing. I don't want to sound like I'm nitpicking, but he had 16 points in the first half, 16 fantasy points. I'm like, oh, baby, let's go. He only finished with 19, but that's because my boy T. Higgins was going off in the second half. This is the second week in a row where Higgins has started slow. He had a drop on a 25-yard play in the first half. Then they come out in halftime, and they're just feeding big T. Higgins. So,
and he had like a 21-yard catch called back by a holding penalty.
Yes,
or an offensive pass interference.
Yeah, he did. So yeah, good for him to kind of get going there. Both of those guys were able to be startable. So, and right now I'm trying to look ahead here to see, is this Chiefs? How is this Chiefs Bengals game not a primetime game? It's a 4:00 next week, but I'm hoping for Jamar Chase is back. Let's get an absolute explosion.
Yeah. And similar to Hayden Hurst, I don't think that T. Higgins is downgraded for Jamar Chase being expected back. I would certainly still comfortably start T. Higgins for this one. And obviously, you don't want to mess around with Chiefs Bengals in primetime. We can get the Colts and the Saints Bucks in those 2 slots.
Of course, gotta have that. Hey, don't forget Bills Patriots to the Thursday night. Okay, don't forget that one.
There you go. Commanders 19, Falcons 13. Brian Robinson moved back ahead of Antonio Gibson as a runner for this one. It was the other way the week before against Houston. Robinson got his first 100-yard game of his career, his first time all year where he topped 3.8 yards per rush. His second best game in that category came last week against Houston. So it's nice to see Brian Robinson do this. He also caught a touchdown pass. I would chalk all of this up to that Atlanta matchup rather than saying, Brian Robinson finally broke out. Now I'm going to use him going forward.
Yeah, Robinson is, it's like no one has been more like, Brian Robinson than me. You just watch him play. He's just terrible. But he's a guy that I would bet excited, like last week, but I think it was the Texans. This week was Atlanta. You just couldn't get these guys out of your lineup. There was a lineup yesterday, a high stakes lineup I had where I started Robinson and Antonio Gibson because I knew they just wanted to get the running backs involved. They ended up, Gibson didn't have a great game, but the both of them combined, it was a 0 RB team. So it's like, if I can get, 25, 30 points combined for my two running backs, even though the ceiling isn't as high, but Robinson, like you said, 105 rushing yards, catch and run for 2 catches for 20 yards, a touchdown. It was a nice play too. He made some guys miss, kind of got in there at the end with 2 defenders down there at the goal line. So he did look good on that out in space there. But the backfield, like you said, it's been Brian Robinson getting the carries. I wish Gibson would have got a little bit more involved, but they got 4 carries for Curtis Samuel, 4 carries for Jonathan Williams. That was frustrating to see Jonathan Williams getting involved for no reason whatsoever. But yeah, you're still gonna like Gibson moving forward because of his role in the passing game.
Yeah, it's certainly still leaning Gibson there. I don't have down who they're playing the next few weeks. So they've got the Giants up next. That's right. They got the Giants, then the bye, then the Giants again, which I don't know why the schedule. This is the kind of matchup that I don't think will be good for Brian Robinson. I think will be better for Antonio Gibson because the place that the Giants are solid to good is that interior offensive line. They have big dudes up front, right in the space where Brian Robinson should be looking to run. So I would expect that he'll show up somewhere outside our top 24 for next week, and then we'll see how that one goes before we project week 15.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like they've been aiming these teams that even if they're losing, the games are close enough where they're going to continue to keep Brian Robinson involved. And I just think, like you said, you get some tough run defenses like the Giants are tougher. They're kind of middle of the pack, but then, you get them out there in games where they're not going to be winning. It's like, he might disappear.
Yeah, it probably at least will be a low scoring game here where the Giants aren't likely to run away. Correct. And Washington can run, like you said, they went run heavy again in this one, 23 pass attempts versus 37 runs against the Falcons. On the Atlanta side, it was the first game since Kyle Pitts hit IR. Olamide Zaccheaus, of course, the only Falcon with more than 3 catches in this game. Drake London led the team in routes, got 4 targets, caught 2 balls for 29 yards. So it continues to be an offense that defies usage. The positive I'll end on, Cordarrelle Patterson did split the rushing evenly with Tyler Algier. We'd love to see more carries for Patterson, but he got targets back. 5 targets matched his season high from all the way back in week 1. And in the 6 games between those two, obviously he spent a stint on IR as well, but the 6 games in between totaled 6 targets. So I hope that we're going to keep seeing this level of targeting for Cordarrelle Patterson going forward.
Yeah, he's going to need it because Patterson has been splitting with Algier the last 3 weeks. That's the Arthur Smith effect. London 4 targets, Arthur Smith effect. CPAT did have a carry inside the 5-yard line, didn't really come close to scoring. And also the pick at the end of the game. The drive before the end of the game, the interception was intended for Patterson at the goal line, so they were targeting him there. Pruitt gets a touchdown naturally just to rub it in Kyle Pitts' face. But yeah, so it's just you can't really start anybody in this offense except for Cordarrelle Patterson.
Does Michael Pruitt have more touchdowns this year than Kyle Pitts? He probably does, right?
Pruitt's got at least 2.
Oh, they each have 2.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Naturally.
Oh, man. Oh, what a fun team to play offensive pieces from. You ready to move on to another game?
Please.
All right. Chargers 25, Cardinals 24. The Chargers quickly abandoned the run in this game. They had 11 run plays for the game versus 52 dropbacks. We had 5 running back carries in the first half. 2 from Austin Eckler, 2 from Isaiah Spiller, 1 from Joshua Kelly. For the game, Austin Eckler made it there PPR-wise, 15 targets, 11 catches, 60 yards, had the touchdown at the end of the game. So ended up with a pretty good PPR day. Worrisome usage on the ground. Not sure how much we can do with it at this point other than complain.
Yeah, that's it. Just complain. And then for those of us who don't have a ton of Austin Eckler, he's going to be the only running back this year who doesn't get hurt, and he's like 5'6", 180 pounds. and gets every single touch on this offense. And
I don't know. He's more like 5'6" and 227 pounds of pure rock.
I guess. Yeah, he's just been hurt every other year of his career except for this one. But yeah, he's just he's unstoppable in the passing game. 15 targets. That's to have a howitzer of an arm like Justin Herbert does, and have every target go to a miniature running back back there is just, it's so weird to see. DeAndre Carter, Josh Palmer, like the other guys that he's throwing to. Keenan Allen does get there with the touchdown, but he's just not really. I just think he's kind of dust. He's that hamstring. He's older. Like, he's just not going to be what he used to be down the stretch. He's not really getting open. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But they threw 83% of the time. So when you throw in 83% of the time, everyone's kind of going to be able to get there. It's just depending on who are the touchdowns going to go to. Palmer only got 5 for 56, so it's kind of a meh game for him if you started him, but he still had 8 targets, so he'll be okay as long as Mike Williams isn't there. But Gerald Everett only in 60% of the routes. I don't understand it, and they're throwing so much. I don't get it. Again, 4 for 18 for him on 4 targets, 4.5 yards a catch, which is just impossible.
Did at least get a 2-point conversion to help a little bit there. But yeah, that's been the issue with him, is right when you're like, oh, he should be involved here, they just don't run him on that many routes. I know he came into this week with an injury. He was off the injury report by the weekend, though, so that shouldn't have been an issue limiting his time. The one guy that's my beware player from this one is DeAndre Carter, coming off 10 targets, 7 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown. He's the kind of guy that you can pick up if needed. We'll see if Mike Williams has a shot to play in week 13. And like you said, if they're going to throw that many times, then everybody who runs routes is going to be an option to some degree. He has had 3 games of 4+ catches all season. All 3 of those have come within the past 4 weeks, so it's been good lately. But, still muted production overall. This was the first game of the year where DeAndre Carter reached 11 PPR points just on receptions and yardage. So, just kind of taking touchdowns out of that equation, because that's the flukiest part of projecting their points. It's been the first time that he really got to that good level of yardage plus catches. So, again, DeAndre Carter is somebody that you can use. Just make sure you're not overrating what he is next week and beyond based on this particular game.
Yep.
Still third in routes behind Josh Palmer and Keenan Allen for this game as well, but ahead of Austin Eckler and Gerald Everett on that front. Cardinals side, big rushing day for James Conner, 25 carries, 120 yards. We talked about the big workloads for him. We thank the Chargers matchup for the production, did add a TD catch as well. So a very nice PPR day. And Kyler Murray got back to doing what we need him to do.
Yeah, exactly. Finally got to play with most of his offense, right? James Conner, Hopkins, Marquise Brown, all healthy. Finally, for the first time this year, together out there on the field. 191 pass yards, not great. Only threw 29 times, but he had two touchdowns. And he also had another 56 yards on the ground and a touchdown. So this is what we're expecting out of Kyler Murray in a shootout against the Chargers. And the schedule is sweet down the stretch outside of a bye week that they have. So that's what we want. And so, yeah, hopefully they can keep this going. I heard Kyler Murray had to do an interview after the game saying he had issues with the offense again, after we just heard they spent the last 2 weeks kumbayaing him and Kingsbury and everything's going to be great. We're getting on the same page. And after the game, he's like, yeah, our offensive scheme stunk.
Yeah, I hadn't heard what the comments were. I knew that there was an issue, so I was just looking it up now. And he goes, the quote, schematically, I mean, we were kind of bleeped. A word that begins with an F. Yeah,
we were kind of effed.
I mean, he's just saying what everybody besides Cliff Kingsbury has already realized. It's a bad offense, and there's only production because of how athletic Kyler Murray is and the quality of pass catchers that he has.
Yeah, exactly. Kingsbury will probably be gone because Kyler Murray's not going anywhere, right? So Kingsbury will be gone after this season, just because they're just not at the peak that they could be.
Notable that in his first game back from the broken bone in his left foot, Marquise Brown led the team in targets, led the team in catches, played 15 more snaps than DeAndre Hopkins. Most of that was on running plays. He ran 3 more routes than Hopkins in the game. He also operated as the primary slot guy with both Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch out. So the question becomes, once those guys are healthy, what exactly do they do? I would guess that they put, especially if Rondale Moore is healthy, I would guess that they bring him back to the slot, push Marquise Brown outside, shove AJ Green out of the formation altogether for the most part. I don't know if Greg Dortch is the first one back healthy. if he makes that move. I don't know. I guess we'll have to watch that. But I think overall, I wouldn't start worrying about DeAndre Hopkins, but it does matter for his ultimate ceiling that Marquise Brown is back. I think instead of just like, auto ranking Hopkins like 6th or 7th every week, maybe now he's like 13th.
Yeah. And 6 targets. I mean, that kind of says it all too. It's probably, I mean, I haven't looked, but I can almost guarantee it's the lowest he's had since he got back. I mean, I think the first game he came back, he had like 6 in the first quarter. So yeah, it's going to be, ultimate ceiling will hurt him, but I think this offense as a whole will hopefully be better with healthier weapons, more shots for Hopkins to score inside the red zone. Marquise Brown, everyone to kind of feed off of each other, kind of like the Niners are supposed to do, and kind of like the Niners do when they are clicking, like when they have those explosions where everybody gets involved. That's the type of offense that Arizona can have down the stretch.
Mm-hmm. And that 6 targets was still a 21% share for this game. So not terrible, but certainly not as high as it was before Marquise Brown returned. Anything else from this game?
Just James Conner week, baby. James Conner back in the passing game and the running game look great. And that's just what he can do in these shootouts. It's good to have him healthy for the playoff stretch here.
Yeah, let's just hope that Darrell Williams doesn't come back and do anything.
Oh, God.
I'm particularly worried about that right now. Raiders 40-34 by the grace of Josh Jacobs in overtime. His calf apparently is just fine because even though he was questionable after sustaining the injury in practice on Friday, 33 carries, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns, had the 86-yard game-winning run in overtime, added 6 catches for 74 yards. I mean, injure my calf now.
Right, that's right. I know a lot of talk about how heavy is he going to be involved, and just he was everything. 86-yard walk-off touchdown, which I missed. I don't know how I missed that. I got up, came back. I'm like, oh, the game's over. I wonder what happened. I look, 86-yard. I'm like, oh, I missed it. Led team in rushing, led team in receiving. He does have, I don't want to throw any cold water on this, but down the stretch, he has the second toughest running back schedule down the stretch. Pats, Steelers, Niners. So there's a lot of talk about him being a league winner and he's going to make everybody all this money. It's like, he's had a nice season. He's been a steal where you got him, but he does have a tough schedule down the stretch here. So we'll see if he's able to win people any money.
Yeah, probably not going to have the enormous weeks that you would love to get, but he will still get there on volume. So it's going to be somebody that we start in nearly all cases, unless you're in great shape at running back. Derek Carr, 295 passing yards in this one. Touchdown throws to Mac Hollins, Amir Abdullah, and Foster Moreau, a cast of stars. Moreau, again, inefficient, got 7 targets, which was nice in this game. 3 catches, 33 yards, and a touchdown. So he's kind of like Greg Dulcich, where you're like, yeah, he's out there. He's probably getting opportunities. He's definitely not somebody that I know is going to give me numbers this week.
Right, exactly. It's kind of, sometimes he doesn't get targets and he'll catch all of them. Then this one he gets 7 targets, only catches 3. Just very inefficient there. Carr, I thought, was it the first drive of the game? He gets hurt. I'm like, oh, he looks like he's in a lot of pain. I don't think he's coming back. And then actually, I'm sorry, the first play of the game he threw a pick, and then the next drive he comes in, he gets hurt, ends up with 2 picks this game. Didn't look that great, but ends up with 295 yards, 3 scores because he's got so much talent around him. Adams 7 for 74 on 11 targets. They were throwing into double coverage to him a lot. They couldn't really get click and get going. So they weren't going to let Devontae Adams beat him, and you could tell by the coverage that they were running on him. So, but Mac Hollins is good enough, Foster Moreau is good enough, Josh Jacobs good enough to help them get it done offensively.
Yeah, potential shootout with the Chargers coming up for them in week 13. We'll see when Darren Waller is ready to go. On the Seahawks side of this one, I'm most worried about Kenneth Walker III. He did score 2 touchdowns on the ground. So if you're just looking at fantasy scores, you're like, great, Ken Walker got there just like I wanted him to. But that masked 26 yards on 14 carries versus the number 22 run defense by DVOA, according to Football Outsiders. He had 17 yards the last time out on 10 carries against the Bucs. 3 games among his past 4 now with 2.8 yards per rush or less.
Yeah, it's not good for him. I mean, he still gets there in the touchdown department and or the receiving department every week. So you're obviously not benching him. And at least Seattle's competent enough to like, okay, you want to try to take away Kenneth Walker? Fine. Geno's able to distribute 328 yards, 2 touchdowns. Metcalf, Lockett, getting those guys involved. Lockett only had 7 targets, 3 for 68 and a score, but he's their kind of their deep threat here, and so yeah, I mean, at least the offense, it's still fun to start pieces from this offense because one or two pieces are gonna hit every single week, and most often this season it's been all 3 pieces: Walker, Metcalf, and Lockett.
I do think that there will be scenarios for week 13 where Walker is not a quality starter. So his yards before contact per attempt have been under 2.0 for each of those 3 poor recent games that I mentioned. His other 3 games as a lead back, all 2.3 or better. So Ken Walker's yardage is very good when he's getting blocking. It's been very bad when he's not getting the blocking. Obviously, that makes sense. This next matchup is at the Rams. They've got Aaron Donald, as we all know, who plays everything well on defense. The Rams also have Bobby Wagner, Ernest Jones, Leonard Floyd, all grade better against the run than they do on pass plays, whether it be coverage for the linebackers or pass rushing for Leonard Floyd. So this is not a good matchup for rushing. And I think there's a chance that Walker has a rough game. You're going to have to still be pretty stacked at running back to have better options than him. But I think that there will be plenty of teams that have 2 better options than Ken Walker for week 13.
Yeah, maybe it'll be interesting. I mean, the Rams are so bad. Like, I mean, Isaiah Pacheco ran all over the Rams yesterday.
Yeah, but for 69 yards on 22 carries, so that's a good example.
Yeah, but I mean, Pacheco's not good, and so I think Walker's good. I think this is a game where it's at the Rams, so maybe scoring will be a little down for Seattle, but I don't know. It'd be interesting. I'll have to go look at the rankings. It's certainly not a good matchup as far as like fantasy points allowed. The Rams aren't. It's a big bright red matchup on the strength of schedule page. But I think if you look a little deeper, this is what they've done all year, and the team's just getting worse and worse. So the Rams are, and they're just going to be out of it more and more. So I think we'll be okay. He'll probably find the end zone in a game that's an absolute blowout. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those like Dameon Pierce where we're not pushing him out of starter range, but if he lands inside the top 12 in those initial week 13 rankings, I'm going to be arguing him down below that, probably somewhere more like 18, but we'll see about the specific numbers.
Sure.
Let's take a quick look at that strength of schedule page because we've referenced it a few times. This, of course, is on draftsharks.com. And as you can see, this is the running backs here. We talk about what's left. You can customize it. I've got it right now set to week 13 and beyond because we have 1 game left in week 12. But if you play into week 18, you can change that setting there to see who teams play there. And then from week 13 on, I mentioned earlier, Derrick Henry got the second best schedule. The Rams have the top schedule. Unfortunately, the Rams
who cares?
About their game in just a minute.
Yeah, who cares about the Rams strength of schedule? But yeah, no, that's such a sweet tool, and it's nice information to have here for the podcast too.
That's right. So finally, before we get away from this team, Geno Smith delivered again, as you talked about, and he might just be startable the entire rest of the season because his schedule looks good. The toughest matchup remaining is a week 17 spot against the Jets, which of course has that revenge game potential to it. We'll see about that matchup once we get there. But I think between this week and that one, there's no week that says don't start Geno Smith to me.
Yeah, he's looked great. He even popped in 22 rushing yards. We're going to talk about. He's always got that little mini rushing upside for us. Has elite weapons all over the place. So yeah, he's going to be a fun guy to start down the stretch.
Chiefs 26, Rams 10 in a game that really should have been there should have been a wider gap than that. Yeah. Nothing big from the Chiefs offense. They just underplayed this one. I wasn't watching it to say what they were doing, could have done better, or whether the Rams were doing something really well on defense, but it's Patrick Mahomes. He threw for 320, only threw for 1 touchdown, threw a fourth quarter interception into the end zone, which could have been another touchdown. So, it stinks to not get bigger numbers than that from Patrick Mahomes, but you can't really complain based on what he's given you overall. The one, let's talk about Isaiah Pacheco first, because he did get plenty of work, 22 carries in a matchup that doesn't favor running, 69 yards, but did get a 3-yard touchdown on the ground.
Yeah. And I feel like every year there's this like kind of a no-name running back. I think it was, Damian Williams a couple of years back. It's always like some guy for the Chiefs in the fantasy playoffs or the NFL playoffs. It always kind of has a really great stretch for them. And I think it could be Pacheco this year. I mean, 22 carries is just so sweet to have on an offense like this. I think what the problem with the offense is they forced a couple turnovers at the end of the game, and they started like with the ball at the Rams 20 or at the Rams 30, and the game was just, it's over. They were just, I feel like they were working on like their 4-minute offense, like the whole like fourth quarter. Let's see if we can just run the clock out with Pacheco here. They also weren't really going to, they weren't passing the ball down by the goal line like they normally do. It was, hey, let's run Pacheco. They're throwing the ball like their third string tight end, like, they weren't really involved. The passing game wasn't as dynamic as it could have been. But yeah, I feel like they were really trying to force the run game here with 26 carries between Pacheco and Ronald Jones.
Yeah, Pacheco did dominate the carries, did also come within 5 routes of Jerick McKinnon in this one. Still only got 1 target, though. That's the only target he's gotten since taking over as a starter. 3 straight games of 15-plus carries. So a nice spot to be in. He's kind of like Deontay Foreman, but on a team that doesn't actually want to run the ball, and especially doesn't run the ball a lot near the goal line.
Yeah, that's a good point too. It's like, man, you get these guys around great offenses, but it's like they get down there and it could be anything. It's probably going to be Kelsey, or it's going to be a shovel pass to Kelsey, or it's going to be some little trick, a little end around to somebody. They're rarely just going to drop back and hand it off, because if you're playing the Chiefs, what do you want them to do? You want them to take the ball out of Mahomes' hands and hand it to Isaiah Pacheco. So they're not going to do that. So it is interesting, but yeah, as far as the passing game is concerned, they really spread the ball around. I mean, Kelsey led the team with 4 catches, MVS 4, Juju 3. I'm sorry, Sky Moore led the team with 5 catches, but still for 36 yards from him. It was nice to see him more involved in like that Kadarius Toney role we were hoping to get last week, because Toney's just a little bit better. He might have done a little bit more with that, but yeah, it wasn't a big fantasy day for all these guys. Kelsey gets there. Kind of embarrasses Jalen Ramsey over the middle early in the game for a touchdown. You think he's on his way to another Travis Kelce monster. Only finishes with 4 for 57. But, it just goes to show you, man, even guys like Jalen Ramsey can't hang with Travis Kelce over the middle of the field. It was funny to watch them show afterwards on the sidelines. Ramsey's trying to explain to the D coordinator what happened. He was frustrated. Like, Kelce's one of the most unstoppable kind of receiving options that we've ever seen over the last 20 years.
I don't know what happened, Coach. He's a 35-year-old white dude. How can he still run like that?
That's right. He moves, though. He moves.
Yeah. That shouldn't be possible, Coach. He's got a beard and everything. Sky Moore, I'm sure that there are plenty of people that are excited about Sky Moore leading the team in catches here. I would caution you to realize that he finished 4th among Chiefs wideouts and routes in this game, tied for 7th among all Chiefs. The 3rd tight end for the Chiefs, Joe Fortson, in this one was just 1 route behind Sky Moore. So I like Sky Moore as much as anybody. I'm excited about him long term. I don't think that he's going to offer you much help in fantasy the rest of the way. He's stashable, but if you're expecting him to make a difference on your playoff roster, I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
Yeah, we're going to get Mecole Hardman back. We're going to get Toney back. Juju, I feel like he was barely out there. He's like their slot guy. Like I said, they kept running these multiple tight end sets. They kept trying to run the ball. They were really working on that. Juju kept running like decoy routes. He kept running like 5-yard ins, 5-yard in, and kind of clearing it out for everybody else. They finally went to him on like 1 drive. He had 3 catches, which ended up kind of giving him some fantasy points. But other than that, he was almost a decoy, or he didn't play. He was only out there for 44% of routes.
Mm-hmm. On the Rams side, Allen Robinson is going to need season-ending foot surgery just as well. We didn't want to use him anyway. It would seem to make sense to me at this point that the team go ahead and shuts down Matthew Stafford for his multiple physical issues. We got the report from Adam Schefter that the team doesn't know when he's going to return or if he will at any point this year. It certainly makes sense to not play Stafford again. So we'll see what happens on this front. But you're trying not to play any Rams going forward. And really that includes the backfield. We did get Kyron Williams operating as the leader for a change in this one, 38 snaps to Cam Akers, 16, quadrupled Cam Akers in routes, 11 carries to 8, but still just no production there.
Yeah, that's literally what I put in my notes was like, start none of your Rams. Like, it's just an absolute mess. It's just amazing to see where they've come from. They win a Super Bowl, unstoppable on offense. Everyone gets hurt. The team looks terrible. And now they're an afterthought. You're not starting any of them. The players they do have stink. Like you said, we're getting mixed reports of Stafford coming back. He is coming back. He's not. that won't matter either. So don't look to play any of these guys.
It's like they're an episode of Goosebumps or some other kid's horror show where they sold their soul. They got that championship, and now we're at the scary part where you're realizing why you shouldn't have done that in the first place.
As a Bills fan, I'd be perfectly happy with
that. You're like, I'm switching it off after the happy part. I don't need this to be scary. That's okay.
I'll watch some Goosebumps to get a Super Bowl.
Tyler Higbee, by the way, playing time limited in this one versus normal, 59%. Did come in questionable, but did play. Ran just 10 routes among 29 team dropbacks. Ran fewer routes than Bryson Hopkins. I'm forgetting now. Bryson Hopkins is the tight end, and Bryce Perkins is the quarterback.
Yes, Perkins is the quarterback.
Okay, yeah. That's what I was about to say. So yeah, even Bryson Hopkins ran more routes than Tyler Higbee. I mean, just let's not use any of them.
Correct.
49ers 13, Saints 0 in the ugly football game. The Saints continue to kill Alvin Kamara. We knew this was going to be a tough rushing spot. He did at least lead the team with 6 catches, 37 yards, second on the team in targets, but even he worked to kill that value by losing 2 fumbles in this game.
I know, lost 2 fumbles, lost one at the goal line, and a play that you always see him score on. He catches this little arrow route with an angle on a guy, like, oh, he's going to find his way in because he's Alvin Kamara. Couldn't get in, gets like lifted up, slammed, fumbles it. I was just looking up, like, man, Kamara's got to be a bust. I just feel like he had that one monster game. I'm like, what a bust Kamara. I look up, he's RB15. Now, he was drafted higher than RB15, but I wasn't even expecting him to be in the top 15 running backs. I think it's just because every week he gets like 4 or 5 catches for, 20 yards every week. So
it really has been that one monster game, though. That's the only time still that he's scored any touchdowns, that week 8 game against the Raiders. And he's now working on a string of 5 straight with 3.5 yards per carry or less. He's had less than 10 carries in 3 of the past 4 games. The receptions have been okay, but certainly not enough to totally make up for it. So it's really pretty busty overall, especially since that Raiders game. The reception numbers were a lot better before that.
Yeah, it's just been, he hasn't been great. So, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough with him down the stretch. Olave, 5 catches for 62 yards and 9 targets. You're starting him every week. You kind of got to hope for that touchdown to really put him over the top. But let's get Jameis Winston out there already. Let's get him out there. Let him sling the ball around. See what they can do there, because that might be the only thing that kind of save this offense, is to see, like, well, what's he going to do differently? Maybe he gets Kamara more involved. Maybe Olave, he gets more involved deep down the field. Olave's been fine. Olave's great, but we would like to get the ultimate ceiling on these players, and it's crazy to say it might be Jameis Winston.
I mean, when the other answer is Andy Dalton,
that's true.
Less crazy. Alvin Kamara gets a negative rushing matchup with Tampa Bay in week 13. Didn't fare great against them in 2 games last year. Then a bye in week 14. So, I mean, Alvin Kamara certainly could be a sit for teams in week 13, as uncomfortable as it still would be. After the bye, Atlanta, Cleveland, and Philly, much better spots. So there's still room for Alvin Kamara to help you down the stretch, but consider your options strongly for week 13. Like I've said, we'll have the rankings out tomorrow to actually see where he stacks up against others.
Yep.
On the 49ers side, Elijah Mitchell was a pain again, but then left the game with a knee injury, likely a sprained MCL in the opposite knee from the one that landed him on IR early this season. Of course, Christian McCaffrey still couldn't capitalize. 49 total yards on 11 carries and 4 catches. And after the game, we found out he's dealing with some knee soreness.
Yes. The MCL sprain, like you said, this whole offense busted. It didn't look good. Like, CMC has knee irritation. He didn't look good. Ayuk, I think, might be the number 1 receiver kind of going forward here. 5 for 65.
Not Jawan Jennings.
He's so frustrating. They score 1 touchdown. It's Jawan Jennings. Didn't help anybody. What are they doing here? But CMC was also open on a bunch of pass play. Like, one, he was wide open. He probably scores on. He just doesn't look to that side of the field. Jimmy G does. So, I don't know. Just kind of a weird game for them to kind of dominate defensively the way that they did and not be able to get more points. 33 routes for Kittle, which was 3rd on the team, but only 4 targets, low ADOT. They're not being creative with him at all. So, I don't know what. Like, there's some games where this offense with all these weapons is just unstoppable, and then you get a game like this against the Saints where it looks pathetic.
Potential shootout spot against Miami next week. So definitely some upside still to the 49ers for that one. Then we'll see about that game before projecting into a week 14 matchup with the Bucks. They finished though with the Seahawks, Commanders, and Raiders. So a very nice remaining schedule for that San Francisco offense overall.
Yeah, and you're still starting your pieces, right? It's good. It's better for the offensive pieces if Elijah Mitchell's out, because it gets CMC more involved, gets Debo more involved. The guy who's had like one good game in the last like 5 or 6. So it'd be nice to see him kind of go off for the playoff run.
I wish I had started Miles Sanders over Christian McCaffrey yesterday. Obviously not a decision I was really making heading into the game. But in that Eagles 40, Packers 33 nightcap, we had 363 total rushing yards for Philly. We had Miles Sanders, 21 carries for 143 and 2 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts, 157 on the ground. He had 100 rushing yards before the end of the first quarter.
Yeah, it was crazy. He had one run. It was like a 60-yard run down the right sideline where he was just like, I don't know if they were in man defense, and he just like rolled right. Nobody was there. He jogged for like 60 yards. I'm like, what is, you guys forgot Jalen Hurts can run the ball? But yeah.
I thought it was the old Steve Bono play for a minute.
Yeah, that's right. 363 rushing yards. They did whatever they wanted. They completely overwhelmed Green Bay's defense. They were running it. They were still throwing. Like, they didn't throw for a lot of yards, but whenever they did, it was like they kind of got whatever they wanted. AJ Brown in one-on-one coverage down at the goal line, easy touchdown. Quez Watkins even doing his best Juwan Jones impression over there. So
he had a game, I believe, for him with a touchdown.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, this offense is just, they can beat you any way they want. They want to run the ball. They can do it with an elite offensive line and some good backs and a great rushing quarterback. They want to throw the ball. They can do it. So today was more of a rushing day, but at least you got guys like AJ Brown was able to get into the end zone.
Yeah, nice to see the offense get back on track after a down game against the Colts. The game before against Washington, I was kind of reminded that when they had the ball, they actually played well on offense. It was just that they turned the ball over too much, and then the defense let Washington run too much. It wasn't a matter of the offense struggling in that first loss of the season. You mentioned A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, not exciting in this game. They did combine for 53.6% of targets. So, we'll take that. We'll move on to next week. The defense for Philly didn't play particularly well in this one. The Packers moved the ball well, 7 yards per play. Christian Watson, most notable, with a long touchdown for his 6th TD in 3 games.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty impressive there. Sorry, I wanted to shoot back to the tight end situation here. Is Goddard's due back in 2 weeks possibly, or has he been out for 2?
Well, let me check.
Or 3. Yeah, I would love to get. I was going to mention any way that they can beat you. I mean, if
this was his second game out.
Okay, so he's got a couple more weeks, but just in time for the 3-week race. If you can sneak in with Dallas Goedert, but yeah, this offense is just going to be so good down the fantasy stretch here.
Mm-hmm. On the Packers side, Christian Watson, 6 targets, led the team, 4 catches, 110. The big play, the 63-yarder, of course, a throw across the middle from Jordan Love after Aaron Rodgers left the game, and then Watson just took off. And as soon as I saw him able to get the corner, I was like, oh, crap, this play is over. And it was. Jordan Love looked decent, didn't play a lot, and it was at a point where Philly was up by 2 touchdowns, but, it was still a competitive portion of the game. We'll see whether it's Jordan Love next week. Aaron Rodgers is in for more testing on whatever his injury is. We heard that he left the game wondering if he had punctured a lung because he was having trouble breathing. They're saying a rib injury. I heard oblique injury reported. So we'll see exactly what's going on. And he says that as long as they're mathematically in it, he's going to try to play.
Which is what you want to hear out of Rodgers. But yeah, back to Watson. Like it's just nice to see. Like, he doesn't get a ton of targets, six targets, not a lot of catches, 4, but he just does the most of them. They target him at what he's successful at, right? So like I like when they take these young receivers, these young raw receivers, and run them on these deep crossers and these deep drags. It reminds me like what they used to do with DK Metcalf, like his rookie year, like these raw guys. Like, just get them on these deep, or even AJ Brown early in his career. Get him on these deep drags, man. Let him catch it and run and just be athletic. And that's what they've been doing with Christian Watson. He had had that long catch and run for a touchdown. Had another one with Jordan Love later in the game at a deep in breaking route. So, they lost this game, but they scored a ton of points. And this is the offense that we expected to see, or at least I expected to see, getting the running backs involved in the passing game. They were scoring, their offense was moving the ball up and down the field for most of this game. You got Aaron Jones with four targets, A.J. Dillon with 4 targets. They're running it, they're catching it. So I think I kept the Eagles a little bit off balance, and everyone was looking good in this game. So hopefully they get Rodgers back and they can continue to get, run this offense through the running backs in the run and the pass game, but then also get Christian Watson involved deep down the field and let him be an athlete.
As we mentioned earlier, they get the Bears next week. So upside spot for everybody. Anybody that you're considering starting, go ahead and line them up for that one. That's going to do it for this Week 12 recap edition of the podcast. You can head to draftsharks.com now for more details on what happened with all of your key Week 12 players in the Shark Bite section. You can check out the strength of schedule pages. You can check out the adjusted fantasy points allowed for all the matchup numbers we've been referencing along the way. Week 13 projections coming out tomorrow, along with our trio of waiver wire articles. Our third Dynasty buy, sell, hold report of the season is also going to hit the site Wednesday, along with the other usual weekly content that comes out that day. Free Agent Finder, Trade Navigator, of course, live at all times to help you out. Adam, you guys have a deep end coming up this week.
Yeah, we'll be doing the deep end again this week, talking about kind of, again, the onesie positions with the waiver wire, looking at some waiver wire pickups. Only 2 weeks left for waivers for a lot of these high stakes leagues. So we're going to dive into that and see if there's any players that can help carry us to a title.
We'll be watching for that. And of course, check back on the Draft Sharks YouTube channel throughout the week to find all of our usual episodes. For Adam Krautwurst and the entire Draft Sharks crew, I'm Matt Schauf saying thanks so much for swimming with us.